great initiative for all the activities connected with our club, and she's in the training and development department of Deloitte. So let me welcome Toastmaster Pratima. Toastmaster Pratima, do what you can't, Toastmaster Pratima.
It was morning, and the new sun sparkled gold across the ripples of a gentle sea. A mile from shore, a fishing boat chumped the water, and the word for breakfast flock flashed through the air, till a crowd of 1,000 seagulls came to dodge and fight for bits of food. It was another busy day beginning. But way off, alone, out by himself beyond the boat and shore, Jonathan Livingston Seagull was practicing. 100 feet in the sky, he lowered his webbed feet, lifted his beak, and strained to hold a painful, hard, twisting curve through his wings. The curve meant that he would fly slowly until the ocean stood still beneath him. He narrowed his eyes in fierce concentration, held his breath, forced one single more inch off the curve. Then, his feathers ruffled, he stalled and fell. Seagulls, as you know, never falter, never stall. To stall in the air is for them disgrace and it's dishonor. But Jonathan Livingston Seagull, unashamed, stretching his wings again in that trembling hard curve, slowing, and stalling once more, was no ordinary bird. This is interpretive reading. This manual is progressive in nature, meaning I have to attempt the projects in a sequence 1 to 5, this being the simplest. The project demands that I read a story, deconstruct it, analyze it, write a narrative, and read it out to you. This project also teaches a reading voice, which is similar to CC6 but not the same. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, a story, written by Richard Bach, a former US Air Force pilot who has also written 3 other books based on flying. Richard Bach was inspired by John H. Livingston, one of the best pilots in the country. In the 70s, when the book came out, people were fed up with religion. So Jonathan Livingston Seagull helped to see things differently, to look in different directions, and to question all our usual beliefs. This book was first published in the 1970s, and it has been reprinted 45 times. It is a third-person narrative and is dedicated to the real Jonathan Seagull who lives in all of us. Most seagulls only care about one thing: eating. Jonathan is not an ordinary seagull though, and above all, he cares about flying. While the rest of the flock is fighting for their bits of food near a fishing boat, Jonathan is practicing flying a curve, sometimes stalling in midair, but soon resuming his curve. He gets a thrill from figuring out how to fly faster and more dangerously than any gull has ever flown before. He crashes a lot, but always gets up, fluffs his feathers, and begins again. The other gulls in the flock don't understand why he cares about all this at all. His parents are dismayed at his attempts and feel that he should be normal like the others. His little successes in flying are scoffed at. He is considered defiant, hubris, and the elders in his council choose to declare him as an outcast. He pleads, but they send him out anyway. Typical to an outcast, Jonathan, despite personal success, begins to experience loneliness and despair that comes with it. He sees hope only when he finds other seagulls who like flying like he does. He gets to a place he calls heaven. He meets Sullivan and Chang. His mentor Sullivan and the leader of the flock, Chang, help him to go further in his quest to find the perfect speed and exceed his limits. He discovers that he can communicate telepathically, and he learns to appear and disappear at his own will. Sullivan tells him that while reaching perfection is something to focus on, it is also essential not to forget where we come from. Chang, a once rebel just like Jonathan, teaches him to fly better, and Jonathan comes closer and closer to perfection. Eventually, he becomes the first seagull to reach the terminal velocity of 214 miles per hour, and later flies the first acrobatics of any seagull on Earth. After practicing for some time, he wants to return to his Earth. Needless to say, he faces resistance from the world that had originally banished him. Jonathan understands that the spirit cannot be really free without the ability to forgive, and the way to progress leads through becoming a teacher, not just by being a student. He begins to teach other seagulls on his Earth who want to fly, and there he meets Fletcher Gull, a gull with a burning desire to fly and a burning desire to learn. Jonathan teaches Fletcher just like Chang taught him. Over time, like a legacy that gets passed on, Fletcher becomes a teacher good enough to take Jonathan's place. Jonathan moves on to a higher level of consciousness. By morning, the flock had forgotten its insanity, but Fletcher had not. Jonathan, remember what you said a long time ago about loving the flock enough to return to it and help it learn? Yes. I don't understand how you managed to love the mob of birds that just tried to kill you. Oh, Fletch, you don't love that. You don't love hatred and evil, of course. You have to practice to see the real gull, the good in every one of them, and to help them see that in themselves. That's what I mean by love. It's fun when you get the knack of it. I remember a young fierce bird, for instance, Fletcher Lind Seagull, his name, just been made outcast, ready to fight the flock to death, getting a start on building his own bitter hell out of the far cliffs. And here he is today, building his own heaven instead and leading the whole flock in that direction. Fletcher turned to his instructor, and there was a moment of fright in his eye. Me? Leading? What do you mean? Me leading? You're the instructor here. You couldn't leave. Couldn't I? Don't you think there might be other flocks or Fletchers that need an instructor more than this one? The one that's on its way towards the light? Me? John? I'm just a plain seagull. And you, the only son of seagull, I suppose? Jonathan sighs and looks out into the sea. You don't need me any longer, Fletcher. You need to keep finding yourself, little more each day, that real unlimited Fletcher Seagull. He's your instructor. You need to understand him and to practice him. A moment later, Jonathan's body wavered in the air, shimmering, and began to go transparent. Don't let them spread silly rumors about me and make me God, okay, Fletch? I'm a seagull, just that I like to fly. Jonathan! Poor Fletch, don't believe what your eyes are telling you. All they show is limitation. Look with your understanding. Find out what you already know, and you'll see the way to fly. The shimmering stopped. Jonathan's seagull had vanished into empty air. The story is about people, not birds. It teaches men and women about the meaning of life, that we are put on earth to strive to reach perfection in whatever we choose to do. Flight is a symbol of any human activity that enhances our personality. Eating is a symbol of activities which only gratify our senses. Such activities also maintain a status quo and limit us from obtaining what we really want to. To me, this book resonates with the title I chose, Do What You Can't. We all do what we can. Most times it works. But there are also times when we have to do what we can't, because that is the differentiator. To me, this book also says that perfection is not heaven. Very often we do our best longing for the best result. We have this image of an ideal state of our lives, and we do get upset because it always seems to be at arm's length, so near yet so far. I want to do what I can't because it allows me to overcome the flaws that are built into me. We don't know if Jonathan really found his real heaven. I don't know if we ever will. But by doing what we can't, we leave a legacy, even if that means touching one person who will continue this goodness and spread it to the future. And I do hope this narrative has stirred the Jonathan Living Seagull in you today. Toastmaster.